The Renaissance Church Choir. We have much for which to thank the Renaissance, and you will be surprised to learn that among them is one that comes from the Renaissance Church Choir. Also, my telling you about the Renaissance Church Choir and making you examine it systematically like this is my gift to you. In fact, you can be absolutely 100% guaranteed that most of the material that you hear in this presentation will be on the test for the unit on the Renaissance. It is the Renaissance Church Choir that has provided us with the names of voice types that we are used to using today. And we shall consider each of them, beginning with their names, their literal meanings, the type of singer, and how they are actually sung. So please prepare to complete or to copy a table of the sort that you see above your podcast screen into your notes. Let's begin with the names of the voice types. They are soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Although we all have some notion of to what these names refer, you will be surprised what the literal meanings of these words tells us about them. The word soprano comes from the Italian word sopra, which means above, and certainly that accords with our notion of what a soprano is, that voice type that sings above the rest. But if you take a look at the word itself and think of it as an Italian word, you see that it ends in an O, and words that end in O in Italian are masculine. This does not accord with our notion of what a soprano is. We normally think of a female person when we think of a soprano. The word alto also provides us with a bit of a surprise because alto is an Italian word that literally means high. When we think of an alto, we normally think of a voice type that is lower than a soprano. So this is a bit incongruent with our own experience of the term. Even more, notice that alto ends with an O and is therefore masculine. And again, when we think of an alto, we normally think of a female singer. Let's skip down to the word bass. The English word bass, B-A-S-S, comes from the Italian word basso, B-A-S-S-O. Basso is an Italian word that means low. It ends in an O, and it is therefore masculine, and in fact it accords perfectly with what our notion of a bass normally is, a low masculine voice. We shall consider the word tenor presently, but before we do so, let's consider the type of singer and the method of singing that is used for these three voice types that we have already examined. Soprano, the Italian word that comes from the word that means high and that is masculine, refers to this type of singer in a Renaissance church choir, a boy singing in his naturally high voice. So when you think of soprano, you should think of the Renaissance church choir and the type of voice and the type of person that sang the soprano parts, those that are higher or above the rest, boys singing in their naturally high voices. Alto, the word that means high and that is masculine, refers to the voice type in a Renaissance church choir that was sung by a man. But the notes of the alto parts of Renaissance church compositions are far above the normal range of a man's voice, so a man singing the alto part sang not in his natural voice, but in falsetto. If you take a look at the word falsetto, you see in it the English word false. Indeed, the word falsetto means feigned, which is a fancy word for faked. And what a falsettist does is to feign or to fake the high sound of a woman's voice. So in a Renaissance church choir, the alto parts were sung by men singing in falsetto. And it is clear that there were no women in the church choirs of that time. Bass, the Italian word that means low and that is masculine, in a Renaissance church choir was sung by a man singing in his naturally low voice. In fact, this is exactly what a bass is in a modern church choir as well. Now let us turn to the literal meaning of the word tenor. Tenor has nothing to do with being above or below something, with being high or being low, but in fact the word tenor comes from the Latin or the Italian verb tenere, which means to hold, and it therefore means held. If you had not taken this course with me, you would have a great deal of difficulty understanding what is actually held and to what this word actually refers. But all of you surely recall the piece that we examined in our first unit of this course, the polyphonic organum by Perotinus, the one that was based on an existing liturgical chant. And we recall that the notes of that chant were prolonged to great lengths, while shorter, faster notes of counterpoints moved above them. Sometimes there are dozens and dozens of notes in the counterpoints to a single note of the cantus firmus. The lowest voice of the composition, the fixed song, on which the composition is based. And very often there was no way to indicate exactly how long those notes should be held. Therefore, one often finds the word tenor written next to the cantus firmus, indicating that those notes are to be held as long as necessary until it is time to move to the next note. The word tenor therefore refers to the long held notes of the cantus firmus in medieval and Renaissance compositions. There are no surprises in terms of the type of singer and the method of singing the tenor parts in a Renaissance church choir. Indeed, the tenor parts in Renaissance church compositions were sung by men singing in their naturally high voices, just as tenor parts are sung in choirs today. Although I have referred to the personnel who sing these parts in modern choirs, I want you to put them aside when you prepare for the test and when you actually take the test, because the questions on the test refer to Renaissance church choir singers, not those in modern choirs.